Well, this is Shah coming back on the channel for Chivalry Chapter 6 and 7. Boy, Chivalry being a learned death wish. Ooh, man, good subject. Hey, if you're liking this content, give me a like, subscribe, and give me a comment below. Boy, we need some comments on this. A learned death wish for Chivalry. Well, let's get to it. Chivalry chapter 6 and 7, Shaw. Last time we touched on in chapter 5 intervening for women. Chapter 6 is going to go into how intervening for women could be a learned death wish. That's the title of chapter 6. Chivalry is a learned death wish. And boy, this is really so. I have three sons, and this has made me think a lot deeper about what I should be teaching my sons in a logical, practical way. That do we just protect all women at all costs, or should we put some thought into this instead of what chivalry would teach most of it? The society teaches us because of chivalry, I guess would be maybe the way to word it.
Yeah, I was thinking about our discussion last time, and I was thinking about how even I, in some situations, kind of feel the pull to do that and have even maybe
Yeah.
even acted on it in some ways. But reading these two chapters, by the way, I think are the ones that are authored by Paul Elam. So that was pretty cool. But
Okay.
the way he describes it in there, especially in respect to thinking about, if you have a son, and some of the examples provided and some of the unfortunate incidents that did happen to the men in here who had intervened and paid the ultimate price for really nothing. It had me
Yeah.
rethinking a lot of stuff, you know.
Yeah, because the first
So
case he names is a girl that had a boyfriend who was she started screaming that the guy wants to hit her or kill her or something.
mhm.
So he intervenes and he loses his life trying to protect this girl that had a boyfriend who was a bad guy. And
Yeah.
he asked the question, why have men like this? Why are they rushing in and dying to protect women they don't even know? And then they become their own crime statistics. And it's like, yeah, that's a great question. What?
Yeah, well, and it's hard not to think of chivalry as the sort of grounding for that.
Mm,
And what's weird too, it's like in a lot of these cases, or at least the ones described, um, this sort of bad situation is here, but nothing really does happen to the woman.
yeah,
It's really and ironically, it's maybe in some ways, there's these things like did ever hit a woman, and even the sort of bad guy or the villain in the story still isn't going to do that. But as soon as the guy steps in and challenges him, now there's this face-off duel,
yeah,
and it just leads to this situation where a man loses his life, but if he had just kind of kept driving or called the cops or something, everybody would be alive ostensibly. So
yeah.
is it really worth it?
So
It's
I think the point is think before you intervene, maybe. Don't go with the social programming that you've been
yeah,
taught since you were 2 years old.
about being a hero and riding in there on your horse and your
Um,
shining armor.
that's
And
right, the White Knight. Yeah.
yeah, and I've seen some other examples before, not even the ones just in here, but where somebody is getting belligerent or they're threatening somebody, especially a woman, and it always seemed to me like nothing was going to happen as far as that much violence or any violence inflicted upon her other than what's disrespect essentially.
Mm,
And the person who intervenes or comes in to challenge that ends up losing their life. And it
yeah.
just makes me think, it's probably better to call the police or to not intervene. But I think a lot of guys, maybe even in us, it's just there's this way that I think chivalry has grabbed masculinity, and there is this kind of compulsion to do something, and there's a cultural programming or something that needs to be unlearned. That's hard to unlearn.
Well, yeah, and he says that he says there's this impulse to rescue the damsel in distress is it's a dysfunctional mandate passed down from generation to generation, living by a narrative that sees a man's life as easily disposable. I think that's right. Like that seems to be true. Like, yeah, we will die to be the hero for someone we don't even know that could care less about us. And where does that leave all the people that you actually do care about? What a dumb idea.
That's the thing I can't stop thinking about because it seems to place the cart before the horse. I mean, for the most part, if it's your kin or your actual family or your actual wife and kids,
Yeah.
who some of these people who lost their lives had wives and kids and family that loved them and that they were responsible for, not just
Yes.
about being family, but having
Yeah.
actual responsibilities to raise your kids and do all these things you got to do. Who are
Mm,
these essentially strangers that you're being asked or expected to lay your life and put your life on the line for
mm.
in order to be called a hero? And then these folks who lose their lives, they got kids at home that are gonna grow up without a father now, and that's gonna be a severe disadvantage for them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But they can sleep well at night knowing that their father died a hero
Yeah.
protecting some stranger
Yeah, he
that
got a few nice flowery words in the newspaper article or
yeah.
whatever news station it was and then to be forgotten. Um
Well,
and
that's
then
what
the
he says. He says, for the sake of preventing more funerals, it's important to push aside the misguided chivalry and false heroism of this type of event and recognize that this pointless sacrifice is one that never should happen. Like,
yeah.
why would you do this as a man? Um, Intervene for someone you don't know that, like in the case he's naming, this guy's name's Jason,
Mhm.
that died for a woman that this was her boyfriend. And
Well,
so,
yeah, someone she chose to have in her life. I mean,
yeah.
I wonder if she talked with her father about her relationship with this boyfriend or what the deal was. It sounds like it was a real, woman falling for a bad boy situation and this
Yeah.
must have been her friend or something. Maybe they knew each other from school or something.
Yeah.
And
And he's saying, as far as glorifying the guy's death because he died a hero or whatever, he says there's nothing to glorify here, not the death of a beloved son, not the ill-fated choices of a young woman who was sexually excited by the criminality of the boyfriend that she had, right? So it's like,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's completely unchecked and it's ironic because it's almost an example of chivalry being used to justify bad choices
mm,
from women instead of letting them face the consequences.
yeah, yeah,
And it just, is it really worth it? It's I mean, at best, call the police. If you see something, call the police. You can yell out, "Hey, the cops are on their way" or something if you want,
yeah.
but
But he does. This is what I think about, and this is a good thing for a father to think about. He says, if you would not want your son to die like this man, Jason, in the story here, and he says, have you told him, have you made it clear to him that dying for a stranger is not your idea of manhood? And like, hey, in our family, dying for strangers does not make you a man. Like
that
that.
was one of the parts that I really I don't know, appreciated about Paul's discussion was that he brought in these aspects. And I think in the next chapter, he brought in the fact that if somebody was, going to call him a coward, he doesn't care. Like that's
Mm,
something that he stopped worrying about a long time ago. He says, "Call me a coward if you want. Question my manhood. I don't care.
mm,
I've been beyond caring about that sort of thing for a long time now. And besides, if you ask me, the hero worshippers are the only real cowards in this picture."
uh,
And reading that I think was really resonated with me because I feel like that. It's just like I'm kind of over this you're not a real man or here come
mm,
the sort of whips or whatever the sort of shaming tactics are. It's just it's just like
yeah.
no thanks. I'm done with that, and it feels like a burden
Well,
lifted.
and yeah, so he's to that point, he says, we've been trained to accept our disposability as men, that
Yeah.
we are the disposable ones, so just accept it and do your duty. And I like what he said, well, why would we accept that? It's just like, yes. Well, the reason we do is because of chivalry, that we've been conditioned to this for our whole lives. And I think, yeah, that is something I think I need to condition out of my sons as they
Yeah,
grow up of like, no, you don't just die for no one or for anybody that you don't even know. That
exactly.
it's worth dying for people that you are in our family or whatever else, but not just some person you just met. Like, well, that's dumb. Like, why would
Or
you do that?
haven't even met, frankly. You
Yeah.
just, I mean, that's another thing. It's just you don't know who these people are. And then when you really think about it, I think it's no surprise men are kind of looking at this sideways now, especially because you live in a society where men are shamed for a lot of things. Women are sometimes given preferential treatment, whether it be for things, seats in college or even jobs or stuff like that. And it's just at a certain point, you know, when enough men are looked over or looked at as toxic or, being unappreciated and frankly outright disrespected, it's like, why would they even continue carrying this on for people that they don't know or aren't their family?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even, Jesus said, greater love hath no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friend.
Hmm.
So the context there is it's actually a friend. This is
Yeah,
somebody
some
you
kind of kith
know,
and
and
kin.
yeah. But I think sometimes in the church that's psyoped probably because of chivalry. Like, well, greater love hath no one that you die for anybody, even if you don't know them or something. It's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, no, no. Jesus said specifically for a friend, not just anybody that you randomly met.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an interesting discussion there about spiritual kinship and all these kinds of things. But yeah, again, I mean, if you're living in this mega civilization, I guess, a secular one, and the sort of community values aren't exactly the same to begin with. And even if they are, though, still, it's just someone who's a complete stranger and you have these very important responsibilities and someone's making obviously bad choices.
Mm,
Where do you draw the line? You know, I think
yeah.
for most people it'll be at calling the police and then moving forward as a concerned citizen at that point.
Well,
So
yeah, and then he talks about there's a video put out not too long ago about it's on us to stop violence, to stop sexual assault against women. And
yeah,
if I can share my screen, I'll pull that up here. It's on us.
I got it.
Assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
To not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility. It's on us. All of us.
To stop sexual assault. Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
So take the pledge. It's on us. And by us, meaning men, it's on us to stop this, right? And here's Joe
Exactly.
Biden and Barack Obama saying, man up and stop this, mama.
That's what it always goes down to. It's just weird. It's like why would they then circumvent it, in terms of like calling the police or whatever. It just comes off as kind of virtue signaling and
Well,
here's
yeah,
us
and,
trying.
and he asked the question then to that point. He says, do you think Joe Biden, the author of the Violence Against Women Act, cares about your son, or does he care about the women's vote?
That's
We
exactly.
all know the answer to that question. And again, as a father with three sons, I think, I need to think a lot more deeply in the way that I instruct my sons on this. Because, yeah, he says, do you want your son playing an unarmed and unpaid bodyguard ever at the disposal of strangers? No, I don't. I don't want them playing that part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too, because then I guess you kind of think, well, what's the corollary from the woman's side if that's what's going to be the case? I don't know. Like what would be the woman's duties on the other end that matches this to entitle them to this privilege? I'm not sure exactly what the
She nurtures and cares for any and all children, I guess. Would that be?
maybe, or if, your drink is out and she's like, "Oh, would you like another cup of tea?" and get you
Oh,
one, or I don't know, like where is this? Where's the payoff here?
yeah.
Where's the balance? You
That's
know?
a good point. Yeah, I was just listening to well, it's John Deloney.
Oh,
Um,
I see some of his stuff. Yeah.
oh, he's awful. And um, there's a woman that called in talking about how her husband tells her that she needs to submit, like
Hmm.
Scripture says, and he quotes Bible verses to her about how the Christian wife should submit. And then John Deloney says, yeah, but it also says that the husband should give up his life for his wife.
I think I
So,
saw that. I think I saw that recently. And he was just
okay.
going after the husband. He was just like, he's just
Oh, yeah.
almost like
He basically
weaponizing.
told her if he doesn't shape up, you need to divorce him tomorrow. Uh,
Yeah. I
but But then he threw out the, well, yeah, he should give up his life for you. So that means that, yeah, he should at least clean the house for you if he's required to
yeah.
give up his life for you. And I was like, wait a minute, how do we go to that? Exactly. Like, so because it says in a way, it doesn't say specifically or directly, but it says in a way in Ephesians chapter
Yeah.
5 that the husband should, or it says that Christ gave up his life for the church. And so
The husband
husbands
should love the wife as
in the
Christ loved
same
the
it says
church.
in the same way the husband should love the wife,
Yeah.
so the corollary is okay, so I guess you could, it doesn't say it directly, but you should give up your life for your wife. Well, so then all the feminists say, well, yeah, that means, well, if that means you should give up your life, well, you should at least be able to clean the house and basically do whatever I say because you're supposed to give up your
Yeah.
life, so you should do all this other stuff. And I take it the other way and be like, wait a minute, if I'm required to give up my life, you mean you can't clean the house for me? Or you can't make
It's
me a sandwich? I'm supposed to give
it's
up my life? Like, what are you supposed to do then? Like,
it's
what?
amazing how fast and like how much of a reflex he had when he was just like automatically like, oh, this guy is a scumbag and he shouldn't be doing,
Yeah.
like he just really came after him and was just like, oh, that's ridiculous, and
Yeah. He
completely
said, oh,
doubted
that's
that
abuse.
interpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just
Husband tells a wife that's abuse. It's like, what? You mean you both ascribe to this religion,
yeah.
and this is the holy book of the religion that directly says this. And if you say that, it's abuse. Like,
I would have loved to hear the husband side of that. Um in that call. I wish they could have three-wayed him. Unfortunately it didn't happen. And then,
yeah.
but then what's interesting is that guy, okay, he's expected to do that for his wife, but somehow he's expected to do that for any random woman that he sees on the subway or
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
wherever it happens to be. So it's like, how did it transfer from just the wife to, to that basically?
That's a good point. Yeah, to say like, well, actually, chivalry teaches we should do that for anybody. It's not.
Yeah, and that in this book, it's on us. It's on us is essentially, telling all the guys to do that for all these
Yeah.
other folks here who may not even have your interests at heart or probably think you're a horrible bigot or something like that. But when it comes
Yeah.
down to lay down your life,
Yeah.
you're supposed to not hesitate to do that.
Well, and it doesn't really say the extent of what you're supposed to do, and it's on us. It's on us to stop this. Like, okay, well, do I need to stop it at gunpoint, or do I need to just say, hey, stop that, and then run
Yeah,
off? Or like, it doesn't really say. Like the
that's
extent
true.
of it you should go to fulfill what Barack Obama thinks you should do. But
Sometimes there will be a maybe I can share my screen. It's ironic because I was reading this last night and I pulled up Twitter and I one of the first posts I saw was from Paul Elam, literally
mm,
saying pretty much exactly what he said in these chapters. But he was
okay,
responding to a post where it showed a couple, it was a man and a woman. They were enjoying lunch, and then across from them was another table, and I think it had one woman or two women, and some guy came and he started assaulting the women on the other table. And the guy with his girlfriend or wife or whoever, he just got up and got her and his wife out of there. They just left. And the post was
mm,
about shaming the guy or like, oh, why did this man who was here just leave? But it was just like, well, I mean, he didn't know those people. He just left. I'll try to share my screen and see
mm.
if I can bring that up.
That's yeah. I agree. It sounds like he did the heroic thing. He got his loved ones out of the situation as fast as possible. And
Yeah, here it is right here. So I don't know if you can see that, but I won't play the video just for YouTube, but you can see this person is shaming him and says when it comes down to it, the world needs masculinity. Otherwise, the bad guys win by default. And it says, man sitting there hurries out of the way. And you can see there's a
oh, well,
woman
go ahead and
here.
play it. I don't. YouTube's not gonna do anything with that. Well,
I, I could play it. I mean, if anything, you
yeah,
edit
just
it out.
play it. It'll be fine.
But here's the guy, and could be his wife, girlfriend. I'm not sure. See, so
Whoa,
he starts trying to take their purse basically, and this guy's like, it's time to go.
whoa, man.
So he gets the wallet.
Make men masculine again. Whoa, this is some campaign or something.
And it's from PragerU, no less.
Presented by Ali Stuckey. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Oh, I can't stand her.
So you can imagine, I just read these two chapters by Paul Elam, and I logged in and I literally saw this video, and I saw Paul.
Oh
Paul
man,
did two
I've
tweets on it.
done a couple of videos on Allie Beth Stuckey. Wow.
Okay, so you know who that is.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know
well,
who that is. Yeah.
well, he put, you people need to get it through your thick skulls. Men are done playing unpaid bodyguard for rando women. And then he made, and I got 702 likes. And then he made another one with another 758 likes. And he says, "No, this take is pure garbage. It's stupid. That man had his own life to live and his own responsibilities. He didn't put all of that at risk for strangers so people would call him a man. I salute him and would have done the same with the clear conscience." So I just thought that was incredibly relevant to our discussion tonight because
Mm,
I think this chapter was probably written a good 7, 8 years ago, maybe more. And it's
yeah,
just like
no, that's a
literally
great one.
less than
Yeah.
24 hours ago. Paul makes a couple tweets and it's like on target exactly for this chapter.
No, but I mean, that's true. Like, it's really like you would have to almost consciously practice deprogramming the chivalry. Because I think my first reaction would be to get up and be like, hey, man, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah, I get it
even if it
too.
was
I
two
know.
guys sitting there and this
Yeah,
guy came up, like, I'd be like, hey, you can't just take their stuff.
exactly.
But, like, it's just like it's programmed in, like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm from the Midwest and you just, like, don't do that. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I just think it's the way we grew up, and I know exactly what you mean. I'd be like, whoa. But it's just I don't know. You just think about it in today's world and in the culture that we're living in. And then it's like, gosh, I don't know. Like, okay, this guy's going after the wallet,
Mm,
and she could let go of the wallet and he'd be gone. At the same time, if you intervene, if this guy's armed or he has a knife or something like that, and just like
yeah.
this kid Jason, 19-year-old who intervened for his friend or whatever and loses his life, is it worth it over the bag?
Yeah.
Instead, though, this PragerU thing is saying this guy should have went in there and put his life down for some woman's credit cards and her purse or whatever that happened to be.
That is priceless. I think I'm going to have to do a response video to that because if Allie Beth Stuckey put that out, like I'm for sure going to have to put one on it because I dislike her a lot.
I'll send you the link for that.
But I was going to do a response video to
Yeah.
that John Deloney one with the gal calling in about her husband who told her to
I
submit.
was surprised about that. I mean, I guess the first thing I thought was, I don't know how religious he is, and maybe he's kind of big in the religious community there for the folks, but it seemed like he kind of like I don't know if that was the overstepping of his bounds. It seems like they were having a kind of spiritual issue. Maybe that's something she
Yeah,
should talk
no,
to
it's
her.
totally not overstepping. It's like, strictly speaking, if he
Yeah.
says, no, I'm not going to clean the house,
Yeah.
that's your
Well, I
job.
mean, John, like, because he came in and he was pretty much like, well, no, it also says this, and this is how that should be interpreted, and that's what this means. It's like, I don't know, is John the guy to be given that
No, he's
advice?
totally not. He's totally not
That was
the guy to be giving
that
that
was the
advice.
weird thing about it to me. So I was like, oh, that's interesting.
So bad. But no, what was so funny was too, as they went on, she was like, well, he's listening. He was something about, has he always been like this? He's like, well, She said something about, well, he started listening to these podcasts. Blah,
Oh
blah.
yeah, that was the one. I think she said. I think they even said the word manosphere in there.
Yes, and she's like, and he's like,
Yeah,
well, who's he listening to? And she's like, well, I don't know, but he's mentioned the manosphere. And then John
yeah.
Maloney's
And
like,
he was like, I got a lot to say. Well, it's like, well, then, John, you should be saying more about that. Like, I want to see John reacting to all those clips. Like, he should have discussions with them, you
but
know?
he's been listening to the manosphere, so he tells his wife that she should
Yeah.
submit. And I was like, well, who in the manosphere is saying that? And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm the one. Is this guy listening to me or something?
You're causing issues in people's homes, Matt.
That's not,
Yeah.
hey,
Now I remember. I actually saved that one because I was thinking about going over it or showing it to the folks on my stream. But
yeah, you should.
I saved it when they said Manosphere. Now I know for sure we're talking about the
Because
same
then he's
video.
like, oh, he's listening to Andrew Tate. And I was like, I don't think Andrew Tate even claims to do
No,
anything with the
yeah, I
manosphere.
don't think so either. It was just funny because it's interesting. Like maybe he has been listening to some of that stuff and he realizes he's been dealing with like a bad deal or something, and he's just like, this doesn't make sense, and he's starting to thinking
Well,
about it.
they also and she also mentioned that like, oh yeah, and like he's been pressuring me to have kids, and then John
Mhm.
DeLuise like, oh, that's so horrible, blah blah. And you can tell this woman is not a young 20s woman. She sounds older. So
Yeah,
my guess is she's at least 30. And he's taught, oh, that's so terrible. It's like, well, if you're at least 30, time's running out if this man wants to have children with you. Like,
yeah,
and you're like, oh, I don't even want to talk about it. So it's like, okay, so you have no kids, you're married to this guy. Uh, why can't you clean the house again? Like, why is this so hard for you? Like,
yeah.
what?
Well, yeah, there shouldn't be that much as far as a mess goes if you don't got three kids running around. But
Exactly. I was like, what are you talking about? Anyway, let's get back to
yeah,
chivalry though.
okay, I'll be waiting for your video on that.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's going to be a good one because now I just thought once you said manosphere, you're talking about submission. I was like, oh man, is this guy listening to my content? Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so then he goes to chapter 7. I think this was Paul, right? For sure. I think
I
Paul
think
wrote
they were
chapter
both
seven.
Paul. Yeah.
Death by Chivalry, the Portland edition.
Hmm.
So it's another case of a guy who,
It
um,
was two guys, I think, or three men confronted a lunatic or
oh
something.
yeah,
Unless there was more, there might have been more than one story in here. But basically, two guys lost their lives, and this was on a train. I remember when that stuff was happening. There were like several stories with trains, and I guess the tough thing about that is like you're on that thing and you're all sealed in there for a bit, and there
oh
may or may
yeah.
not be security. Um, But again, Paul had voiced, his opinion on this, and there's a tweet from him in the book where it says, "Two more good men killed by chivalry. Let this be
Mm,
a lesson to your sons."
yeah.
Um, and he said within 24 hours of posting that, he got a lot of butthurt reactions to it, which are still rolling in. He says the real men, quote unquote, Gyno Trad Brigade showed up early and with gusto. They were accompanied by feminists trying to outdo the Gyno Trads on being righteously indignant about what I said. There was even an
Mm.
MRA, men's rights activist, who chimed in, as some MRAs do, with instructions on what I should or should not say because, reasons. So here I am witnessing a virtual slut walk of traditional men, feminist women, and a quasi MRA bringing up the rear, all chiding me about being a coward, or worse, a man who doesn't care about women. So
Mm,
that's the
yeah.
fascinating thing about chivalry is that it
Well,
sort of underpins all these different things, whether or not you're a real man, conservative gyno trad, or whether you're all the way over here and you're a strong and independent feminist, or
well, yeah.
even some
Yeah.
MRAs to some extent, which that part was fascinating to me.
Well, and he said the thing that was interesting about this case specifically was it was an even better case of chivalry because this man just insulted these women.
Hmm.
He didn't even threaten them with violence or anything like that. He just insulted them. And because they were insulted,
Hmm.
this these other two men stepped in and said, "Hey, you can't talk to them like that." Blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And that's when it escalated to they lost their lives
Yeah.
because this crazy dude.
Well, that was another thing. It's kind of like that first story where it's like that guy came in as a shining hero, and then there's this huge ego battle that didn't need to happen, and there was a much more probably practicable just de-escalation that maybe he could have done or avoid at the very least avoided escalating it so much. And that's when it gets into what do you teach your sons?
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing because it seems that it's not just about it's chivalry sort of it's like this kind of cultural affront or something even if the situation isn't that bad, it's just words
Yeah.
so far. There wasn't any
There wasn't a
actual
threat of violence yet, is what he points out. It was just
yes.
like these women were insulted. And so these men, white knighting, had to step in and say, "Hey, you can't talk to them like that." And then it,
Yeah, and then it
yeah.
leads to this horrible outcome where if they would not have said anything, then probably it would just been some more screaming and yelling, and then that would have been it. But they didn't do that. There's a
Mm,
paragraph here that goes into this, and he says one CNN report stated that the victims approached the killer and tried to calm him down. It appears that this, however, is not entirely true. One of the women, Destiny Mangum, gave the following account to CNN in another report. And this is her quote. Then a stranger intervened, she said, telling the man that he can't disrespect these young ladies like that. Then they all just started arguing, she said.
mm,
Then Paul says, now think
yeah.
about that for a moment. The man was clearly agitated and mentally unstable. His original targets, the women, wisely moved away and gave him a wide berth. One of the men, however, according to Mangum, stepped in and told the killer, quote unquote, that he can't disrespect these young ladies like that. Then the violence happened.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting thing there about it. It's kind of completely chivalric in a way because it's all about you can't talk to my ladies like
Yeah,
that.
you disrespected my lady.
You're not being, a man or whatever it is, or this is an affront
Yeah.
to, masculinity or whatever it happens to be. And then it
Mm.
became this weird challenge of masculinities. And then all of a sudden, two people are left on the ground without their lives. And
Well, yeah, because he said these men didn't step up to protect anyone from anything but the hateful ranting of an a-hole. That's
Mhm.
all they did, and then they lost their lives because of it. And
Exactly.
and yeah, I mean it's a great point for someone who's a father. Like, what? Well, you better be intentional about what you teach your sons. Like, it's not worth dying.
It's not. And I think, I'm not a father. Maybe you can attest to this, but speaking with my dad, I can kind of see maybe how things changed or what he's shared with me, and just in the sense of when you have kids, some certain things you got to be able to let go or not let them bother you. Otherwise, if you got three little kids at home,
Mm,
and you get in some situation that you could, get away from or leave so you can get back to taking care of your family. You have to
yeah.
be man
Well,
enough. You have to be man enough to be able to swallow that sometimes and swallow your pride, basically.
Well, I
Um,
wouldn't say like that in situations like this, but it's more just like on the job, and you're like, man, I really need this job because I got to support
mhm,
my family. So, yeah, I got to swallow my pride and just be like, okay, okay. When, you really want to tell somebody off, maybe you want to punch them out. I don't know. But
exactly.
it's like you can't do that or else then my family, it's going to be rough. Like,
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I've heard and tried to understand. And you think, young guys are, it's not, it is kind of a stereotype or a trope of young hot-blooded guys
mm,
being less likely to be able to, see this rationally,
yeah.
which leads to an early demise instead of applying some wisdom there. So when it comes to teaching, your kids and bringing them up in a certain way, they have to be able to have a check on that or think about that before following some kind of impulse that leads to a horrible outcome. Paul says stepping up to an irrationally angry, verbally abusive stranger and telling them that they just can't insult the little ladies isn't the act of someone intent on diffusing a tense situation. It's the showboating of a white knight who probably doesn't have a real clue about what exactly is motivating him to act so mindlessly.
Yeah, that's a good point. 'Cause- and he says that he learned that in what he had experienced being like a counselor or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, that
I
you
think that
don't,
was this chapter or the prior one.
yeah,
Or
you
I
try
think it
to
was this chapter.
de-escalate a situation, not come in and say, hey, you can't talk to her like that or blah, 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 because that most likely is going to escalate and
Hmm.
cause someone who's probably mentally unstable anyway to go nuts. Then,
Yeah, exactly. He says, and there's another point here that can't be ignored. I've worked in many psychiatric facilities and in one correctional facility.
there we
In
go.
that work, it was routinely expected that I was able to have a calming effect on agitated and often violence-prone people. It was quite a challenge at times. Yeah, well, it's interesting too. I wonder. It seems like chivalry is just embedded all over that situation. Because on the one hand, the guys step in because my ladies are getting disrespected, and
Mm.
then on the other end, they challenge that guy for disrespecting the ladies, and then all of a sudden his manhood's challenged in front of the women, and then they start fighting over the women. It's just a big
Yeah,
disaster.
but well, think about this though. Would So I know these are strangers, which makes it bad, but what about if it's your own wife or your daughter? That
Yeah,
changes the dynamic a little bit.
I think
Um,
so. I think so. Now you're dealing with your kin and all this kind of thing. Now, when it comes to that, there's probably more to be said about the situation that your wife and daughter is in. But you guys could all be out at a family picnic and some lunatic can come
yeah.
and cause trouble and nobody was doing anything wrong. They all made good choices. You made good choices. The question is, okay, what do you do in that situation? I would still say de-escalation is probably the way to go until you have no option.
I'm just saying, like, that'd be hard for me if somebody came up and just openly disrespected my wife to be
You just want to
antagonistic.
punch him in the face.
Yeah, that'd be like, wait a minute, this is my wife. You can't talk to her like that. Like, what
Yeah.
are you thinking here, man? And
Yeah.
like the logical thing would be, okay, let me de-escalate. This probably
Hmm.
guy's probably mentally unstable, blah 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 blah.
Or armed or something.
Yeah, but the other thought's like, hey, this is my wife. You can't talk to her like that. What are you doing here? Uh,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, it's interesting too because then it gets into this question of attraction. Like when you think, you hear these stories about like the guy cries in front of his wife once and then she's no longer attracted to him or she gets the ick or maybe they're extreme stories, but that happens. But there's probably also stories where some kind of disrespect like that comes up and maybe the guy doesn't rise to the occasion and then feels like
oh,
he looks lesser in front of his wife or something like that.
yeah, that could be an attraction killer. I would think. Like, if yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like still though, I don't know. Like when you really think about it, okay, you think about their lives, your children's lives. I mean, at a certain point, it's just like tell the wife, take the kids, get out of here while you hold them off or something, whatever it needs to go, whatever it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've never
I'd
really
like to,
been in that situation, but when I
I'd
think
like,
about it, yeah, yeah.
I'd like to think most dads, um, probably would go into like a super practical make sure the family's okay mode. Like I don't maybe it wouldn't even be a pride thing. It would just be like
Mm.
just straight default to make sure my family's good and whatever we got to do.
Well,
But
yeah, and I think I'm a fairly big guy too, so I think, even like crazy people are probably like, I don't know if I want to go over there and mess with that guy. Like, so that probably helps too. Not that I'm
yeah.
huge, but if you're a bigger guy, then that
Yeah,
probably
there's
helps
a
out a
little bit
little
of
bit.
some nice advantage there, I'm sure.
Yeah, that probably helps some. But anyway, he sums up nicely though at the end. He says, "I've learned one thing about needless deaths like this is that it brings the decency brigade right out of the shadows every time." And he says they crow about the mindless heroics of dead boys and urge more boys to emulate the fatally stupid antics of modern chivalry. And so he kind of ends with that thought, and then he says, what are you teaching your sons here? And it's worth teaching if you want them to stay alive, it's worth teaching them something better than modern chivalry. And I thought that's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's I it's interesting because there's this talk of like submission and stuff earlier. I guess the one thing my mind goes to is that a lot of people and women, especially, and men, but also women, when it comes to this conversation, make bad decisions or put themselves in bad decisions or in
Mm.
bad scenarios. And I mean, whose responsibility is it really? And where is the line, and is it worth crossing that for somebody that you really don't know, who probably doesn't want to listen to their own family or brother or father, who might be, you can say, responsible for them if you want to use that that
Yeah.
language. And then you're supposed to do it. But the tough part about the conversation is there is this learned cultural programming that's very hard to undo.
Yeah.
But reading this chapter a bit, it had me thinking, and there was a few just taking some deep breaths and saying, it is kind of nice to not have to worry about that, especially considering the current day and age that we live in. And the more that they shame men for this, like that PragerU video,
Mm.
the more I think it strengthens men's resolve to also not care about it or sort of walk away from it, if you want to use
Yeah.
that terminology. Because it's just like, who are they to disrespect, throw that disrespect at men and say you have to do this or you're not a man if not. It's like, I'm tired of other people defining my masculinity,
Yeah.
um, especially if it's just like a slave whip for utility. And it's like, no thanks. I'll decide what I want to do when I want to do it. That could be the main thing, especially is looking at your motivations and saying, is this something I really want to do before reflexively
Mm.
operating on some chivalric, notion.
Yeah, because I think even for me, it's not chivalry just for women, but maybe chivalry for someone who's less powerful. Maybe to be like, even like with that situation with the guy running up and grabbing the women's purse or whatever. If
Hmm.
it was like two guys sitting there and the guy ran up and like started grabbing their stuff, part of me would be like, well, you can't do that. Like,
Yeah.
what are you
You'd want to
doing?
put your foot out a bit and trip them as they run away or
Yeah, or it's like,
something.
hey, you can't just grab some guy's stuff. Like, what are you doing over here? And
Yeah.
but yeah, depending on what he's armed with, that may not be a smart thing, you know?
That's where the issue comes in. And when looking at the guy and with his girlfriend or his could have been his wife, or sister or whoever, his
Mm,
first instinct was like, hey, let's get out of here.
yeah.
And that's what he did. So uh that was, yeah, it's so tough because it's almost like you almost can't know until you're in that situation. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems that way sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they say usually people react in like, well, like three ways. They fight, they flight, or they freeze up.
Freeze. Yeah,
Yeah, there's like three ways people usually react to like those types of
that,
situations.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I guess you don't know until you're there what you're gonna do, really.
yeah, yeah. That's always been kind of my mindset to it. And gosh, I don't know. I can see maybe men wanting to be a hero sometimes, but if I could say anything, is it better be something that you really believe in or you really want to be a hero for. So
Yeah.
I hope it's
Yeah.
worth it, I guess, as part of the discussion here, especially if it ends very badly like that. And well,
Mm.
he was a hero, but a forgotten hero in a few weeks' time.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly forgotten by Allie Beth Stuckey on that video.
Exactly.
Anyway. So next chapter, chapter 8, is women's reaction to a loss of chivalry. Oh man, they can't stand it. Well, that was This is Shaw with the book Chivalry, chapter 6 and 7. Hope you guys like this content. Good stuff. Boy, good things to think about. Good thing to maybe train your mind out of, because we've been programmed in this direction since we were 3 years old. Good thing to think about. Anyway, it's good stuff. I'll just end with what I always do. Christ is winning. He is building his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Until next time, this is the Post Millennial Man.